Good evening and a warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Property, Highways and Transport Select Committee. My name is Alan Chapman and it's my privilege to be chairing this meeting. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible to YouTube underneath the broadcast. Have some housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, please follow officers to the fire exit and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch off any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. Finally, resident feedback forms. For those watching via YouTube, if you are so minded, you complete one of our residents' feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run the meeting. Right, thank you for that. I can now proceed to the main core of the meeting. Before I do so, though, I'd like to invite my fellow councillors to introduce themselves. If you started on my right with Councillor Wallana, if you could just press the buzzer and introduce yourself for anybody watching at home.
Hi, Councillor Sherry Ahmed Wallana.
Councillor Adam Bennett.
Councillor Kamalpreet Kaur.
Councillor Tony Burrows substituting for Councillor Peter Money.
Thank you, Tony. And of course, as and when people speak as guests, I'd like you to introduce yourself. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
So this evening we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Burrows and Councillor Money, with Councillor Tony Burrows substituting for Councillor Money.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. No, nobody's interested. That's good to know. Item 3, to receive the minutes of the previous meeting, which agreed. Is that agreed? Yeah, thank you. Item 4, this is simply to confirm that the items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public and those marked as Part 2 will be considered in private. I think I'm right in saying, Steve, that everything's public today. Okay? But we have to confirm that just to be safe. Sort of thing. Right, we can now proceed to the main core of the meeting, so to speak. Item number 5 is capital major projects update. Mr. Norton.
Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. I'm Michael Norton. I'm the head of the Capital Programme Works Service. Our service runs quite a number of projects for the Council. We cover the education estate, we cover the housing, we cover corporate, and we cover community buildings. In that, we mainly work on new build, major refurbishments, and we have a major plan and programme of works going ahead over works that are in design, works that are on site, and works that are completing and being handed over shortly. I won't read the stuff that's circulated, but I will go through probably each one of them just to give a flavour of the type of works that we do. Some of the projects we have completed recently is our care homes, where we built 2 dementia-friendly care homes. One of them is Grassy Meadows Court in Hayes, and the other is Parkview Court in Useley. Grassy Meadows was an 88 bed unit, and Parkview was 60. They were built on a dementia-friendly basis, and the Grassy Meadows actually received the gold standard certificate from the University of Stirling for being dementia-friendly. In terms of, say, some of the corporate works we do, we're after completing a refurbishment of our libraries, which was completed in the last number of months. We did most of the council's libraries where they were redecorated, new flooring. We redid some of the workspace to try and orientate it towards the more modern use of people bringing their own device rather than using fixed computers, albeit that there are still some of them available for people as well in the libraries. So that was completed recently, and the libraries were done on a phased basis where only 2 were usually out of operation at one time, so there was always an alternative for people to go to. We also, I suppose it's a few years back now that we completed the Battle of Britain Bunker Exhibition Centre. That was, I suppose, to have a focal exhibition centre and visitor centre for the actual bunker itself, which was part of the 11th Fighter Group Command. The actual building itself that we built won quite a number of awards, being the LABC Award, the RICS, and also the Spaces Awards. And it created a great attraction at the time with the facilities that we put in there and the exhibitions that are actually in there. Some of the housing developments we completed recently are, we did 10 homes at Ditchfield. These were houses, 3 and 4 bed, and they were built to the quite high standards in terms of insulation and in terms of environmental friendly. Some of them have had charging points, and all of them are enabled for car charging points. Roundel House, which is called Crescent in South Ruislip, that was 33 units, 34 units, half of which were social housing and the other half was shared ownership. And that was successfully completed and handed over. We're also involved in the Hayes regeneration, where the Austin Road estate and the Avondale estate is being demolished and rebuilt, and that is ongoing at the moment. We are hoping to have a developer on board in the next number of weeks. In terms of some other corporate projects we're doing, one of the projects that's on site at the moment is an extension and remodeling of the Oxbridge Mortuary, which is down near Brunel University on Kingston Lane. This is quite a challenging project, albeit not a massive project in its own right, due to, I suppose, the type of equipment that's there. It is quite expensive, and the other part is that we have kept the actual mortuary in operation throughout the project, and they are carrying out post-mortems while we are building. So what we've done is we've built the extension, which is almost complete. They're swapping over into the new part, then we're going to go into the older part and refurbish that, and then we will join the 2 parts up together so that we'll have a new modern mortuary facility. The mortuary covers both Hillingdon and Ealing. We've also started on site for a leisure centre in Useley in West Drayton. It's actually on Harmondsworth Road in West Drayton. It comprises a 25-metre swimming pool. There's also a leisure pool, a splash pool with a slide. There are studios, a gym, a games hall, and we're also putting a 5-a-side pitch on the roof. So that is quite an extensive project that has just recently started on site. Anyone that's passed Harmondsworth Road will see the hoarding around it. Cranford Park is also a project that has recently started on site. This is where we are renovating some of the old stables, enhancing the park, and building a cafe over the old vaulted cellars that were in the building that was demolished some time ago, and that has a contractor on site at the moment and is progressing. Some housing that's on site at the moment, we're building 5 3-bedroom houses at Moorfield Road, and also we have 6 houses on site at Nelson Road. We're also doing a refurbishment of the Asha Day Centre, which will involve moving a children's centre in there to facilitate our ability to sell off part of the Nestles Avenue estate. House extensions, this is a pilot scheme we've done just to see the viability of it and how it would work. We have a demand for 4-bedroom houses, but it's actually hard to get land or sites for houses of that size. But what we've looked at is, could we enhance the existing estate by extending existing 3-bedroom houses? So we have looked at six units as a pilot scheme, and some of those have been handed over now. So it appears to work, and it allows us get larger houses without having to find locations to build them from new. So it is something we probably would recommend to continue doing. Beechwood Avenue is a multi-occupancy for a temporary accommodation unit. That's on site at the moment as well, and is progressing, where we're renovating a building that was being unused and is now will be used for as a temporary accommodation. We also do work in the schools estate, where we do the school conditions, where the major maintenance items on schools. We have a summer program again this year. We're trying to have a summer program every year to try and do the main items, mainly the items that come up are roofs, boilers, window replacements. Some of them involve asbestos removal on some of the schools as well. So we schedule every year. We try and schedule a number of projects, put them through, and get them going. And that's working reasonably successfully. So we're continuing with that program. We also have some major expansion works with some of the special education needs, and that's being worked on at the moment to find facilities for the increasing demand for special education needs. We do also some major planned works. A lot of that is actually underpinning. Some of that underpinning is due to, I suppose, age of building sometimes. Sometimes it's the actual site itself, where you have movement, particularly in London clay. Sometimes it's related to trees. So we have a program where we pick up all of those and try and deal with them. They are quite slow, because first you have to do a lot of investigation, survey work to see what the actual problem is before you can solve it, but we have a program to deal with that. We have also a pipeline of works. I know we mentioned a flavour of some of them there. Like we have, say, the scoutings and guides, where we're replacing a number of scout or guide huts. And we do some other, like we've completed a bowling clubhouse program, and there are a lot of other community items that we do, like some work in the allotments and for other community facilities. In terms of I suppose the problems for capital works at the moment is the volatility of the market is a big issue for us in a number of ways. One, it's hard to get labour, it's hard to get materials. They've gone up significantly in price. Energy is costing more, and while we try and let a lot of our projects on a fixed price contract, we are finding pressure from contractors in terms of works they have priced in the past, and now they're finding the materials aren't at the price they tendered for. Also, we're having pressure on new projects as well, where we're tendering them, and we're finding that the prices that are coming back are significantly over the level that we expected them to be. One example would be a housing block that we tendered. We had an estimated at about 8 million, expecting it maybe to come in around 9. It came in at almost 13. And it's just unviable. So we are re-looking at the methods we use for procurement. We had, I suppose in the past, tended to go down the route of single-stage tenders where we had a fixed price, whereas now we're, I suppose, having a more open look at two-stage tendering and other methods to see can we, I suppose, reduce the risk for the suppliers to try and get a better price, but take the risk ourselves that it may go up as we go along. But it's one of those things that the market is almost demanding at the moment, and that for the next certainly few months is our biggest concern. Okay. That's my speech. If anyone has anything to ask me. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for a very good overview there. I have to be honest, I didn't realise you did as much as you do. I just assumed that you were busy concreting over my ward. I didn't realise you were doing other people's as well. Before I open it up to other questions, other members of the committee, I've just got the one question. You mentioned the house extensions pilot schemes times 6 units, converting 3s into 4. Am I right in assuming these are townhouses where there's an integral garage?
No, what we've been looking at was houses that come void. And what we do then is we do a quick initial assessment on them to see if we can extend them, because sometimes there's a sewer in the way or something else that prohibits it being extended. So we initially do a quick appraisal to see is it viable to extend it, and if it is, it can be. Some of them are detached, some of them are semi-detached, some of them are terrace. So it depends on what's available. Yeah.
But my point being that, well, being a clever dick, I was assuming that they would be townhouses. They're not. You are in these instances actually applying for planning permission to extend the physical building.
What we're doing is either permitted development or prior notice, where possible. But
it is a physical expansion. It's not changing the use of the garage.
It's. I think there is one of them that there was a garage use change. I think there's one
that may be the one I'm thinking of, and the other 5 aren't. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
And there's one loft extension, and the rest are physical rear extensions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Wallana.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Norton, for your presentation. That's brilliant. A couple of questions. You talked about refurbishment of the libraries with new facilities and the devices. How many libraries have been refurbished with new facilities, and what sort of device has been installed?
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. The libraries we refurbished all. It's easier to tell you which I didn't do rather than the ones that were done. We didn't do the Central Library. We didn't do Botwell, and we didn't do Northwood or Northwood Hills. Now there's different reasons for each of them. The 2 Northwood libraries, there were structural issues, so we wanted to relook at those rather than refurbish something that there was I suppose a more systemic problem with. And in relation to Botwell and Uxbridge, we wanted to look at a bigger plan of all corporate assets. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't answer the second part, which was what did we put in. What it was is a lot of people using the library now, and particularly say students or younger people, they want to bring their own equipment to the library. So a lot of it was actually putting in desk space and have the facilities with USBs, etc., that people can just plug into and use the library facility. Like we still retain, the books and all the traditional stuff. We also put in or refurbished the children's area, putting kind of flooring in that was more than just plain carpet. And we also had a look at, I suppose, the orientation of the libraries. When you come in, can you see the desk? Also the coffee facilities that are in there, to try and ensure it was more suitable to the needs for each of the libraries.
Have you got any more?
Thank you. That's marvelous work, remarkable work. Thank you. About Oxbridge Mortuary, after the extension to the existing capacity, so how much it would enhance in terms of capacity of the mortuary?
a lot. I suppose a lot of what we're doing there is modernising it as well. We will be replacing all the post-mortem tables. We're actually going to put in a unit as well, which is a pressurised unit. So if there was a post-mortem done on somebody with a suspected, say, disease or something that you wouldn't want to escape, we have that pressurised room now in it that can be done. We're also catering more for some bariatric, I suppose, post-mortems that have to be done as well. So we'll have more tables available, so that there will be the possibility for increasing numbers if that is required. But it also helps our current staff to actually have more tables available, so they're able to work on more post-mortems at the one time.
Before I open it up to Councillor Burrows, just you mentioned the pressurised room at the mortuary. Is that, shall we say, a nice to have, or is that now a must have?
It's I suppose this was actually planned pre-COVID, and it never entered our heads when we were doing the initial thoughts on this that it could be needed for something like that. But it is something that allows our staff there to actually widen out what they do, rather than these, I suppose, non-standard post-mortems would normally have to be sent elsewhere. So it can be now done at Oxbridge. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Burrows?
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the mortuary again, so we share it with Ealing. I presume they're sharing the cost of the refurbishment as well.
I believe that Sorry, thanks. Thank you. I believe that the capital cost is being done by Hillingdon, but they pay us some fees. But I'd have to, as I say, I'd have to get somebody maybe from our finance team to give you the exact way that the actual payments work from Ealing.
Okay. Just on the school expansion, it's very close to the summer holidays now. You're saying that the currently 5 projects going through cabinet members at the moment.
They're gone through.
They've gone through.
Yeah, they've gone through.
I was worried.
Yeah.
Because the school holiday starts next week, and.
Oh yeah, the contractors are lined up, and
the problems you said with the cost of labour, etc., going up, and goods, and that has that affected any of these projects?
Yeah, it's affecting all our projects in that the cost that's coming back in is significantly higher than we would have initially expected. We just have to adjust our budgets accordingly. But it's the market conditions. The other option is not to do them. But particularly with school conditions, is that say if you have a leaking roof or a boiler that's going down, we have to do it at some stage. And yes, we could wait and see what it's like next year, but it could get a lot worse. Plus, we'll have a programme for next summer as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to make a couple of points. Firstly, to say very well done in terms of libraries. I think it's one of the outstanding features of Hillingdon at a time when neighbouring boroughs are either reducing the number of libraries that they have or cutting services and facilities. That in Hillingdon, not only do we have an awful lot of libraries spread all across the borough, but we've reinvented them as community spaces and continue to invest in them and make them very popular for residents. And I also wanted to say a well done and thank you for the Battle of Britain bunker. So it's in Hillingdon West Ward, which I represent, and also where I live. And I think the change that we've seen at St Andrew's Park with a huge new housing development, I think it's really good that we've taken the time, the investment, the land to pay homage to the heritage, to World War II, to the RAF, and to the importance of the site and its importance to Hillingdon in years gone by. I had a question for you around, so it was about the Hayes regeneration. So the Avondale Drive site, so quite a significant undertaking already with a lot of residents there. I think it said that there was 94% in favour in the resident ballot. A couple of questions was, do we know what the turnout was in terms of that? I'd appreciate that's putting you on the spot. You might not know the exact figure. And secondly, just, is there a plan whilst the construction is underway to reaccommodate residents within Hillingdon, or do we feel that they may need to be moved elsewhere?
The turnout, I'll have to come back to you on. In relation to accommodating people, that has been worked on for the past year or so. So there's a lot of residents have been rehomed in other areas, and some of them are happy to be permanently rehomed there. I think some people do have a right of return. I'd have to look at how many have exercised that right. But by and large, I think Hillingdon is catering for everybody. I don't think there is anybody that's going to be just thrown out on the street or anything. There's going to be something for them. There are some properties that we're constructing at the moment that are being used for decant as well, and some of those, okay, there might be a temporary accommodation for those people in the interim because they may not be ready in time, but they're being allocated. So, and some of the those extension program we did, a number of those actually went to the Hayes regeneration as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, before I move over to Councillor Clark, another follow-up question, if you will. My understanding is that when you're decanting people out on a temporary basis, am I right in thinking that, for the sake of argument, a family's in a 3-bedroom and they're eligible under low carter for a 4-bedroom, that they are being moved to a 4-bedroom?
That is the ideal situation.
Okay.
Which isn't exactly answering your question.
Yeah. But ultimately, the idea is that ideally, the family with the 3 that's eligible for 4, they will get a 4 in the short term, ideally, but they will definitely get a 4 in the longer term when they come back, so to speak.
Yeah, that would be the idea of the temporary move, is that the 4-bedroom is available, maybe not immediately, but within a number of months.
Thank you. Councillor Keith, sorry, my apologies for the delay. Can I ask you to turn your mic?
Yes, Michael, I just wanted to know, when we do these extension projects and other expansion projects like in Avondale Drive as well, first I wanted to know, with new Hayes redevelopment, how much of it is an increase in social housing? So we are developing all of that, and a bit of it is social housing, and you're going to go to eventually private investors or buyers as well, because they're different kind of residents. How much are we improving on our social housing in those ones? And my second question is, when we do these projects, and if they spill on to, say, roads and pavements, say bigger projects like that, or smaller projects that you mentioned that you're doing in summer, if they spill on to pavements or roads, are we making sure that those areas are then also accessible to wheelchair users and, say, parents with buggies and pushchairs? Because sometimes when we put the roadblocks on, it gets really difficult for people with disabilities to use them. Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, in relation to how much is social housing, I'll have to come back to you on the percentage that is social housing, but that is factored into it, but I'll get the actual percentage for you. In relation to the roads and pavings, yes, we at times have to put hoarding on roads and pavings, but we do expect that contractors would make facilities available for people and have it as easy access as possible for particularly wheelchair or less mobile people, so that they're not having to walk out into traffic, or while sometimes people have to maybe cross the other side, but at least that is done in a safe location, and to try and avoid that if possible. But it is an area that we do look at and monitor. Now, we can monitor on our own projects. However, it wouldn't be our team that would monitor it on private developers. That would be our planning colleagues that would deal with private developers.
Thank you.
No, okay. Councillor Willan, I believe you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad to see Useley and West Drayton Layer Centre coming soon. So we actually worked for this, and it will be nice to have a local layer centre for Useley and West Drayton residents and for the local community at large. When this project is going to be completed?
We expect this project to be completed in 2024. So the kind of spring, summer time of 2024 is where we're expecting it to be available. Because we have to get the contractors through, then there'll be a whole commissioning process to get it all up and running. And that is the kind of overall expectation at present.
Thank you.
We're on programme as well at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? No, I think we've covered everything, Michael. Many thanks for a very good presentation and some very informative answers. I believe there's a few things to follow up on, but you can now enjoy the rest of the lovely summer evening if you wish. Feel free to stay if you want. It's a popular show, but feel free to go if you do.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And councillors, I'll slip away now. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I could say it was a difficult decision, but you got there in the end. Moving on, item number 6. Thank you for that, Michael. Item number 6, select committee review, policy review, discussion and guidance. And for this, I'm going to hand over to Steve Clark, the Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Chapman, first, I don't know if you want to change the running order now that we do have Tony Zaman and Dan Kennedy in the building, as we just need the committee for that item 6. But yeah, I'm happy to be led by you, but if you want to skip on one item, then that's...
You are right, actually. We were discussing juggling things around in case you were late. I don't think it ever occurred to us you'd be on time, to be honest. But obviously, well, the floor's yours, gentlemen. What I would ask is if you could just introduce yourself for the benefit of anybody watching, and then obviously we'll ask questions. There'll be opportunity for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I will just, I'm Tony Zaman, the Chief Executive of London Borough of Hillingdon, and I'm just going to say a couple of words to give an overview, introduction, and then Dan will talk in some more detail about it, and then we'll assume you may have some questions about the strategy. So, and that's the key point, really, that it is a strategy rather than a plan quite deliberately, in so much as it spans a greater period of time that enables us to be much more transformative in our thinking, rather than that we're just sequentially doing a series of service changes that may not stack up into something that looks very different to what it is now, just slightly different. And given that we are wanting to significantly improve the sort of efficiency of the way in which we do things, you know, the context that we're all seeing around us is, you know, real for everybody, for every local authority. Hillingdon is no different. You know, we intend on delivering all of the great services that we do, but in a slightly different way. And, you know, there are some obvious standout ways in here that Dan will touch on, but it's important probably that we clarify what those things mean, because I think there is a danger that it means something that could be a little scary for some section of residents. So I'm obviously talking about digital in its first instance, which we'll perfectly happily go into some more detail should you wish. So it's a strategy deliberately. Underneath the strategy, there'll then be annual plans that are about what we're actually doing and being held accountable for in any 1 year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year. And then by the time we get to the end of the fourth year, we would expect to see some of the outcomes set out in here being fully visible and delivered, and the experience of residents accessing council services being very different to what it is today, but hopefully still something that they're very proud of and where they perceive us to be putting them first. So I'll hand over to Dan.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, and good evening, committee. I'm Dan Kennedy, the Corporate Director of Central Services. So really just to echo Tony's point there, that this is very much outcomes forward looking. And the other important point I do want to emphasise, and it's a really important point that's about us as a council, whether obviously we want to be and need to be a well-run organisation delivering services directly to residents, but we're also a leader of place, and that is how we can be the ambassador for Hillingdon as a place, working with a whole range of partners, community organisations, the police, and so on and so on. And so that is reflected very much in the structure of the draft strategy. So there is an ambition for residents, there's an ambition for us as a council in there. And then the structure of the strategy is set out and structured around 5 commitments, and they're very much outcomes based. They're not directorate organised. So if I just walk you through those, and these are statements of where we want to be as a place and as an organisation. That we've got safe and strong communities, we've got thriving, healthy households, a green and sustainable borough, a thriving economy, and a point Tony touched on just a moment ago, a digital-enabled, modern, well-run council. That's what we are about, what we want to be as an organisation. So what we've not set out quite deliberately is what we will do by day X, because actually it's a 4-year statement. And as you would expect in terms of performance and management and business planning, we will have, and are working on currently, an annual plan, a corporate plan for the local authority, and that is cascading through into the senior management teams and the management teams, and that becomes then the reference point for teams and for team members in those teams, because all the research shows that you have much happier employees and who feel a real sense of pride in what they do if they can get a real strong sense of purpose and can connect with where we want to be and where we're headed as an organisation. They can see how their contribution is making a difference. So just a few points then about the consultation, and then we can open up to questions from the committee. So in terms of the consultation, it's running for 9 weeks, commenced on Friday. We're keeping it as open and as really as straightforward as it can be. So we've got an online survey, but we're also very happy just to receive written comments or be invited to a meeting for discussion. We're promoting the consultation far and wide through social media, press releases, all the usual channels. And we're also proactively writing out to over 350 organisations, community associations, faith organisations, all the big partners in Hillingdon, in the borough, housing organisations, and so on and so on. So we really, really want to get some really helpful comments back. And the process next steps will be, and it's set out in the report, Cabinet in October, full council November. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before I open it up, I mean, I've got no questions myself, but as you said, it's a vision statement, if you will. It's not a day by day. This is what we're going to do a week on Wednesday, and so it is a wonderful vision, shall we say? Though I put it that way. Does anybody have any questions or observations? Councillor Bennett.
No questions. You'll be pleased to know. No, I just wanted to say how pleasing it was to read. If we're the context of where we are today in society, the outlook is bleak. Inflation, cost of living crisis, Ukraine still lingering with COVID. But I thought it was an incredibly sort of positive, uplifting strategy, covering everything that you would hope in terms of our sort of commitment to put residents first. And I really like the fact that digital and sustainability was called out in those sort of key areas and themes. I think it's something you see in the private sector a lot, less so in the public sector, and I think it's really good that as a borough we're putting that sort of front and centre of where we want to be in a few years' time.
Thank you. There's no other questions? I think you two gentlemen have got an early night as well. And you're not even hesitating like Mr. Norton did. You know what you're doing. Many thanks, gentlemen. It's a really good thing. Yeah, thank you. Moving back to the agenda, then that was item item 7, of course, which we think. Moving back to item 6, the Select Committee Review, Policy Review, Discussion and Guidance. Over to Steve Clark.
Okay, so this item is the initial stages of the committee's major review. This is the core piece of work that the committee are responsible for. And as you would have seen in the report, there's some guidance issued on how we choose or how the committee will be choosing its topic. Today's session is essentially getting the ball rolling, making a short list of potential topic ideas that can be scoped further with the officer team, the cabinet member, with the committee members themselves, in order to see which one's most viable. Within your pack, you've received a scorecard. It's not compulsory to use this, but it's a great way of assessing which topic ideas would be most suitable and kind of most benefit to the council and the work that's being done. Having spoken to the chairman outside the meeting, unfortunately he's unavailable for this meeting. He has given one suggestion, which is within the highways remit of this committee. Particularly the footways and roadways resurfacing programme, with an emphasis particularly on the pavements resurfacing, how we obtain best value with a possible blanket way of resurfacing, and possible explorations of new technologies in terms of resurfacing technologies. That's the chairman's suggestion, which is, I would say, specific enough. If any suggestions would need to be specific within the committee's remit. Obviously, there's 6 core areas of this committee's remit. I'd veer away from generalising, saying transportation is within this remit. I'd like to review transportation. If we can really get down into the detail about what specifically about the area would like to be reviewed, then that's ideal in terms of me going away and scoping these possible ideas. So Councillor Burrows has made the suggestion on pavements within the highways section, but I'll hand back to the chair to open the floor for the committee.
Thank you, Steve. As has been said, we're just going to discuss options tonight. We're not going to make a decision. Hopefully we'll come up with a list of 2, 3, 4 options. Steve will then go away and scope these out and basically see if there's enough meat there, so to speak, to actually have a worthwhile thing. There might be an issue that is an urgent issue, let's say, but if there's not enough there for the comprehensive thing, we'd be better off simply saying, can we have a report about it next month, sort of thing. So we've already had the suggestion from the chairman about pavement and road renewals. Before I throw it out, I'd like to put my suggestion in, which is basically the same, renewals and repairs, but for the council's social housing estate. My understanding is we've got something like 13,000 council properties. If just 1% of them are unoccupied, void, whatever you want to call it, that's 130 properties. So obviously we need to keep the maximum number available. There is going to be downtime and this sort of thing, so I think that's worth looking at. Does anybody else have any other suggestions? Councillor Woolana?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just thinking if we can give a thought on empty properties. So across the borough, if there are empty properties, for how long we can...
I was going to say, would that, I suspect we might be on this. Is that something where we'd be better off with an actual report on?
So empty properties wouldn't come under this committee's remit. That's housing, which I believe is covered by the Resident Services Committee. Although, as I understand, even with Councillor Chapman's selection, sometimes these topics are cross-cutting. And so I would assume if we went with the social housing repairs and renewals, we would end up crossing over with other committees. However, empty homes does sit firmly within another committee's remit, so I'd veer away from empty homes.
I think the thing is there that if we are looking at the council's processes for renewing and repairing and etc., the inevitable metric of how successful that is the number of vacant houses, sort of thing. So I'm sure we could get away with that. Thinking about it, yes, we did have a presentation in my previous committee at the back end before the elections, and I have to say it was fascinating to hear about void houses. So if we assume that's incorporated into, shall we say, my suggestion, does anybody else have any suggestions? So, Councillor Bennett?
So just a couple from me. So I think roads more than pavements, I would say. I think that one of the strengths of Hillingdon historically has been that we do have a very quick turnaround on repairing potholes, resurfacing roads. I think based on resident feedback over the past couple of months, I would say that possibly has slipped slightly. And I get the understanding from officers that there's an ongoing review, but it's a problem that is only going to get bigger. Secondly, is more around road safety or pavement safety, but specific to e-scooters, e-bikes, electric skateboards, which I didn't even know was a thing until yesterday, till I almost got knocked down by one. But I think it is a huge problem for society that these are growing in number. They are largely uncontrolled, and whether you're a driver on the road, a cyclist on the road or a cycle track, or a pedestrian on the pavement, these things come up at significant speed, significant within the legal limit, but actually people as well can tamper with them and make them go much faster. And I kind of think I'm somebody who's got good spatial awareness, good hearing, good eyesight, and I've almost been hit several times for the sort of more elderly, disabled, vulnerable and young members of society. I think this is going to be a real challenge for us over the next few years, and it would be great to kind of deep dive into that further around what we can do borough-wide to make their passage safer, but also safer for everybody else who uses pavements and roads.
That's a great suggestion, and I would say road and pavement safety specifically is a good suggestion, specific enough for me to really scope out and have a look at. As I previously clerked the Public Safety and Transport Select Committee before the election in May, we did have a suggestion, or not recommendation, but one of the councillors requested an item on e-scooters. Having delved a bit further into e-scooters particularly, it is the GLA and the police who are essentially responsible for enforcing them, as they're considered vehicles. They're considered vehicles on the road. However, so in terms of going down the e-scooters route, it may be outside of the council's powers, but the pavement safety is completely within the council's powers. So that's a good suggestion that I'm happy to take forward.
Does anybody else have any? Councillor Gerlich?
Just wanted as a question, there are areas in, I would say, Ruislip, where we didn't have pavements at all for the last 50 years since the houses were built. And it came to my attention recently that similar size of the houses in the streets where there is proper pavement, they are selling at higher prices than the houses in my street, and according to the estate agent, it's purely to aesthetic look of a street, that people prefer pavements to the patchwork of asphalt. Okay. So no, there's any plans of replacing those proper paving stones or something that looks, decent.
Yeah, of course. I like that suggestion. I think it could come within Councillor Burrows' pavement specific topic, but that would definitely be a good part of that. In our work programme for September, we do have the interim head of highways coming. I think that would be an ideal question for her when she does come in September. But I'd say that idea would be incorporated within the potential pavements review.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that. As you say, I think while we're reviewing pavements, we can just as easily review the properties that don't even have one, so to speak. So I think that will crop up at some point. Thank you for that. So you've got 4, I think, there.
Yes, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4.
4, yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank you for that. So we've done that. Moving on to item number 8, the Cabinet Forward Plan. And I've got in my notes Steve to lead.
So you've got the Cabinet's Forward Plan issued from July onwards. It's a 12-month document, as you're aware, of Cabinet's primary activities and decisions to be taken by Cabinet. Essentially, it's for noting by the committee. It puts on your radar what items are going to be coming to Cabinet in the coming months. So you've got the Forward Plan in front of you, and committee are recommended to note the forward plan.
Is that duly noted, I think? Thank you. The only thing I would say, actually, is I went through it and I highlighted the stuff that's under the properties and highways and transport, and I would say roughly 50% of the items are, so we might not be the biggest spender, I don't know, but in terms of activity, we seem to have the biggest number of little projects going on.
So for this committee, I filter the stuff that it comes into our forward plan. So you will see a lot more of Councillor Bianco's property, highways and transport in the one in front of you. If you look at the public forward plan, it's got all the other cabinet members and their remits as well. So it's a lot bigger than the one you've got in front of you. Sorry, I should have mentioned that before, which is why you're seeing Councillor Bianco and our committee's remit.
Yes, I do wish you had mentioned that before.
Apologies, Chair.
There was me being very clever and suggesting that the other cabinet members didn't do anything. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that, Steve. That is duly noted. And last but not least, item number, I've lost my notes here.
9.
Item number 9, the work programme. Over to Steve.
Of course, so this is the committee's work programme. I'd like to add that, considering our discussion on potential topics for the major review, we've got 4 topics for me to kind of really look into and agree outside of the meeting with the chair, the vice chair and the Labour lead, who's unfortunately not here tonight. I'd say 3, whichever topic we choose, the other 3 would be useful to come back to the committee as information items. So with the committee's permission, I'd like to add those prospectively to the work programme as individual information items in the year ahead. Yeah. Other than that, willing to take any suggestions if members are looking to add anything to the work programme.
Does anybody have any comments, observations about the work programme? As Steve says, we've got 4 potential items. One of them will be a runner, so to speak. The other 3 items can be for information and reporting. Obviously, we don't know how long it would take to get the report together, so it's not a question of agreeing when we want to see them now. But if we assume that will be the case, that one's a runner and the other 3 come back as reporting items. Does anybody else have Councillor Bennett?
So I probably should have brought this up under agenda item 6, but it kind of links back now. One of the other things that I was thinking around is relation to parking and specifically the opening of the Elizabeth line. So it's kind of transformative in the sense of the speed at which people are going to be able to get into central London, out to East London, Essex, South East London. I've given it a try myself. At the moment, you still have to change at Paddington. But I think we're going to see a real shift of the way people use public transport within the borough. You know, even as far north as sort of Uxbridge, Ickenham and Ruislip. You know, I live in Uxbridge. It is actually quicker for me now to get a bus to Hayes and get the Elizabeth line into central London, depending on where you're going. And I just think at some point we're going to see that impact on parking, where people may be driving down towards Hayes or West Drayton and parking so that they can walk to the station, and the impact on residents and businesses there.
So just to clarify, you're talking in terms of, for example, somebody in Ruislip currently gets the Met line in, whereas you think it might be advantageous later on to drive to Hayes, West Drayton and get the Elizabeth line in, because that will go straight through. And basically, it's one tube journey. Yeah.
So the example I had to go to a conference at Excel, which is Custom House. Yeah. So normally that's a Metropolitan line from Uxbridge to Finchley Road, Jubilee line Finchley Road to Canning Town, then a DLR. I got the U4 bus to Hayes, 15 minutes on a train to Paddington, a short 2 or 3 minute change, and then it was 15 minutes to Custom House. Air conditioned, smooth, everything that we want from a public transportation system, everything that the Piccadilly line isn't. And I just think it will see a big change. And you know, TfL have made adjustments. You know, there's been the double decking of certain bus routes that go to those stations. We've seen the 278 bus route be introduced, but I think we'd be naive to think that there won't be a shift in people driving towards these stations, and that will impact residents in the wards in the south of the borough disproportionately.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's a good one. Does anybody else have any? Councillor Cole?
I was just wondering, as we were talking about road safety, could we look at provisions to put in place where people are actually using roads for racing. So, you know, they're kind of racing circuits.
Okay, like boy races.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially at night.
Right.
It gets really worse at night.
So apologies, I didn't turn my microphone on. So although that's obviously firmly related to our highways remit, I would suggest it comes more strongly under antisocial behaviour, which unfortunately isn't within our remit. What I can do is speak to the clerk of the Resident Services Select Committee, who does cover that, and suggest that as a potential item. You may wish to also speak to the Labour lead on that Select Committee, but I would say it's more of an antisocial behaviour issue than a highways issue.
Follow up on that. You know, if we could do some traffic calming measures or something in place where they can't actually use it as a racing circuit.
That would definitely come under our committee. So traffic calming measures would be, I can speak to the transportation team and see if they can bring an item to our committee around that.
Thank you.
Does anybody, Councillor Gaelic?
Just to add to that, you know, sometimes I don't know what they're called, but there's narrowing of a road. So there's like the, you know, space of 2.1 meters. Maybe those measures would sort of stop them from racing because, that's the thing, yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any, bearing in mind we're looking at the forward plan, anybody else got any comments, observations? Well, on that basis, I think we've come to the end, Steve. Thank you for being very supportive on my first chairmanship of the committee. I declare this meeting closed at 8:04. Thank you.